Absolutely love the abusive style of rock crawling you guys seem to have on the island.
Yeah, it's the conditions and the terrain dictate that. I get people say, "Oh, why don't you guys crawl stuff, this and that?" You come out on the greasy, slippery, mossy rocks and try to crawl stuff, and I don't care how good your buggy is. I don't care how good your tires are. We need to just hit stuff full throttle, and it's fun. So, so we do a lot of what we call clearing off the rocks, because the rocks don't stay clear on their own. So you got to hit them at full throttle and scrape that moss off.
I don't think I've ever heard so many rev limiters in rock crawling videos as your guys's. It's always bing, bing, bing going off.
I like to say that I like to use my gas pedal like an on-off switch. I step on the gas and within 2-3 seconds, it just starts bouncing off the rev limiter and it makes me giggle. And that's what the whole point is.
Warning. The 4x4 Canada podcast contains discussion about exploring mountains, camping beside lakes, and enjoying the outdoors. Guests also talk about jumping race trucks side by side, racing 1,000 horsepower rigs across mud pits, and jumping monster trucks over stacks of buses. None of this is for the faint of heart. The 4x4 Canada podcast is not responsible for bringing out your inner adrenaline junkie or making you want to get out there and explore the back roads from coast to coast. The 4x4 Canada podcast is not responsible for broken parts due to jumping your vehicle, hitting mud poles too hard, crossing deep streams, and doing other dumb shit. However, we will take credit for inspiring you to explore mountaintops, spend quality time outdoors with your friends, or meeting new like-minded people, and most importantly of all, following your dreams. Welcome to the 4x4 Canada podcast. I'm your host, Wes.
And I'm Brady from Pathmaker Productions.
Super excited to have you here, Brady. As I mentioned off air, I've been watching your videos for, 5-6 years, something like that, and absolutely love the abusive style of rock crawling you guys seem to have on the island.
Yeah, it's the conditions and the terrain dictate that. I get people say, "Oh, why don't you guys crawl stuff, this and that?" You come out on the greasy, slippery, mossy rocks and try to crawl stuff, and I don't care how good your buggy is. I don't care how good your tires are. We all laugh. You don't see any BFG reds on any of the rigs here. That's desert stuff. We need to just hit stuff full throttle, and it's fun. So
exactly. That was something I was going to get into in a second about how your wheeling is totally different on Vancouver Island. That's where you're from, Vancouver Island, and it's wet, it's mossy. The desert style, or even in the interior of Kamloops and Kelowna, and that, it's a lot drier, and you don't have the same issues you guys have down at the coast.
I always say we're rock crawling in the rainforest, and people automatically think the jungle and this and that. But sometimes we look around and you realize, God, we really are in the rainforest here, and big trees and moss and dirt. And the other thing is, if we don't drive on a trail for 6 months, that trail disappears. Everything grows so fast with all the rain that, the trail just absolutely, grass will grow in, the salal will come up. And so we do a lot of what we call clearing off the rocks, because the rocks don't stay clear on their own. So you got to hit them at full throttle and scrape that moss off, and which also dictates how we cut trails, because the trails get easier over time. When you're in Moab and you're in the desert and whatnot, the trails, they stay pretty close to the same. But for us, they're real hard when they're mossy and grassy and everything like that. And then you scrape all that moss off, and then when it's this bare rock, it's actually easier. So we try real hard, knowing that they're going to get easier as we run more rigs through them. So it's kind of the backwards of a lot of places. A lot of places, it's that it gets more chewed up and it gets harder as it goes. But for us, once the rock gets clear, then you don't need as much full throttle. But like I said, we like skinny pedal. That's fun.
As I mentioned off air as well, I don't think I've ever heard so many rev limiters in rock crawling videos as your guys's. It's always bing, bing, bing going off.
I like to say that I like to use my gas pedal like an on-off switch. And in my rig, it used to be a TBI. And then I did an EFI swap on it, and we talk about all that stuff, but it revs out way faster now. So it's really hard for me to put it at $3,000, $4,000. Like I step on the gas and within 2-3 seconds, it just starts bouncing off the rev limiter, and it makes me giggle. And that's what the whole point is. Yeah, I'd probably be less hard on parts if I didn't drive like that. But as I like to say, I got 180 horsepower and I'm going to use all of them.
There we go. Perfect. So Once again, we're talking with Brady from Pathmaker Productions. Check him out on YouTube. He's got tons of videos up there of rock crawling on the island, as well as some mainland stuff, and also heading down. You've attended King of the Hammers before and a couple other events down in the States. Lots of great coverage over there. So on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, but majority Vancouver Island, which I'd really like to see. One of the things you and I talked briefly about before is that a lot of the guys that you're wheeling with, they're not these huge high dollar rigs, right? They're not $150,000 rock crawlers and that. So it's nice to see guys just out having fun on rigs.
If you watch the videos, you've heard me say it and coined the term on the channel is island spec. And it's really funny now that term goes around everywhere. And I made a comment one day in the video explaining what that meant. And then I had people in their comments arguing with me about what that meant. It is really funny to have a stranger argue with you about a saying that you came up with. They're telling me that something is not island spec. And it's like, how would you know what island spec is? You don't even understand. And what island spec is just run what you brung and use the least amount of dollars to get out in the woods and just drive hard and have fun. Yeah, you could buy expensive parts and you could throw money at the problem always, but there's something about just grabbing a welder, scabbing it together and just making it work and getting out there for the cheapest amount possible. We're just the poor Canadians, and I could wait longer and put an Atlas in my rig, fancier stuff, or I could go wheeling for the next 6 weeks instead of waiting for one part. And that's what it's all about. I try to wheel at least 50 days a year on the trail. And if you're doing that, I wish I had the budget that I could be buying expensive, good stuff. But we're all about making it work and however you can and throwing it together, because Saturday comes around again every week and we better be out there.
That's one thing I've always thought is I'd rather put, say, $150 of money into gas money than $150 into mods, right? Because you're going to get that much more enjoyment out of it if you're out there more often. So
100%. That's why my rig has still got leaf springs in it, because when I did the solid axle swap on it in 2009, I couldn't afford it and didn't know what the hell I was doing good enough to do a proper link suspension setup. And now I'm looking at $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to link the front and the rear. And that's a lot of wheeling trips. I would rather I break a leaf spring. It's $100 for a new leaf spring, throw it in there and we'll go out wheeling next weekend. Is it the best? Absolutely not. I'll be the first to admit it. But suspension travel, no. I lift tires on everything, just bouncing up things, but I'm out in the woods and that's all that matters. It's all about getting miles and getting seat time in.
Exactly. That's what it's all about, is having fun. That's the whole reason we do all this shit. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So let's throw it back a little bit. Like, the island has a lot of great wheeling on it in regards to rock crawling. A lot of it's been shut down over the years, but there used to be some really neat events like the Island Rock Crawl put on by the club. I believe it was Victoria for a number of years, and the Island Rock Crawlers, actually. And so it's got a lot of good history of wheeling over there. Is that something you grew up doing, or is that something you came into later on?
Not grow up like in terms of wheeling with my dad or anything like that. He's a boat guy, but I used to skateboard and race BMX and this and that. And then I got my driver's license when I was 16, which was way back in 1998, 1999. And me and my buddy Alex just started rock crawl. And at that time, there was a lot more open land. We were with Blast from the Past, a group called Island 4x4. This was in the heyday of all the forums and whatnot.
Yep.
And they had a lot of rules. And we all eventually got kicked off of Island 4x4. And so a group of us started another group called the Black Flag 4x4 in the very late 90s. And the rule there was just no one's in charge. And we're just a bunch of guys who just want to go out, do some full throttle rock crawl and this and that. And I ended up buying my rig. I was still in high school. I was 17 years old. I bought it in the year 2001, coined the name the Pathmaker at that time. And it was, as my mom always says, it used to be such a nice truck. It was 1987 Nissan Pathfinder, one lady driven. Literally, I have the folder of receipts from everything that's ever been bought for that thing. It was one owner driven until that point. I bought it at 17. It was on 31s. I put 35s on it and did some IFS lift and this and that. And you just kept breaking parts and whatnot through the early 2000s. And then did a lot of wheeling, but I bought my first house in 2008. So I started filming stuff, calling myself Pathmaker Productions in 2004. So that's why I laugh when you said, oh yeah, you've been doing this for 4 or 5 years. And it's actually 21 years I've been calling it Pathmaker Productions, and bought the Pathmaker in 01. And then in 09, I bought a house. Literally within a week of buying it, I turned the carport into a garage and cut all the IFS stuff out of there. And back in that time, guys were doing the standard, the Dana 44 matches the rear. And that was as far as everyone was going with Nissan Pathfinders. And I could see the writing was on the wall with Dana 44s, that you're going to be limited to 35s and 37s. At that time, I was the first Nissan Pathfinder on the planet to put 1-ton axles in it. I put a 14 bolt in the rear and a Dana 60 in the front, and just sitting on my ass in the garage. And like I said, I didn't know how to do a 4-link at the time. And so leaf sprung and whatnot. And my rig has changed since then, and here and there, as they always do, but its core has stayed the same. It's got a TK's doubler in it. So that's another thing that at the time was extremely rare, hard to find. It turns out the only company on the planet that builds a T-case options for it was my buddy Mikey, who owned Northwest Fab, who's no longer there. They're up in Parksville, and they were making TX10 doubler to a Dana 300. So I have the adapter like number 4 or something like that, and that was to bolt a Jeep Dana 300 on the back of a TX10, which gives you a dual transfer case, which if people don't really know what we're talking about, that just means I have 2 transfer cases. So I can go extra low. Like my low first gear is 101-to-1 reduction. And back to you saying rev limiter, I know that 00 second is 65-to-1, and that's right in the money shot for big launches. Is 00 second is where my money maker. And then I started blowing up Dana 300s. I was telling you, just last weekend I blew up my 6th Dana 300. I'm really hard on those, and so people who want to hate that there's a shortage of Dana 300s, I'm part of that problem, because I got a 6,000-pound rig and 40-inch tires and full throttle launches, but it's still going strong. It's got full hydro in the front, and it's slowly, we call it reverse engineering a buggy, and I've seen it many times through my buddies. So you start out with a full body rig and you just keep cutting stuff off, and next thing you have a firewall and some frame rails. But I haven't got to nearly that point yet. My rig is very well known for its look, so I could cut the roof off and I could probably save a few £100 and this and that, but I like it that it's the party wagon. I got room for the barbecue in the back and all that stuff. And sure, I could definitely make it lighter. I could definitely do a lot of things, but it works pretty damn good the way it is right now. And that's what it's all about.
I think it's a cool looking rig. I love rigs that still run in bodies, and it's just something more relatable. And the fact that it's a Nissan Pathfinder, you don't see those out there on the rocks very often.
Oh, well, I saw you in your list of questions. You asked why a Pathfinder, and that's contrarian me. Back in the Black Flag days and whatnot, I knew 50 guys, 49 of them had Toyotas. And well, I meant no Jeeps. Sorry, Jeep guys. But I just couldn't have the same thing as everyone else. And so here I am 24 years later. I'm still paying for the consequences of making the decision of, but hey, I almost bought an Isuzu Trooper or an Isuzu Rodeo or whatever, which is when you're 17, you're looking at them, they look the same, but god damn, I'm really glad I didn't buy an Isuzu. But now that's my calling card, and I'm the redheaded stepchild, and I'm typically anywhere I go, I'm the only Nissan out there and on the trail. But
I saw that you also recently just picked up a couple other ones. I saw on one of your, I think it's Instagram short or Instagram reels or something like that, that you're running a couple stock Pathfinders and trying to beat the hell out of those.
That's a funny thing too, is because everyone got into Toyotas, and no question, Toyotas have a way better aftermarket, and they're more reliable. They got better motors, this and that. But they got what they call the Toyota tax. They're expensive. I had the Nissan. I know Nissans. I've taken every bolt on my rig apart at one point or another. And both of those ones that you saw in that video, the blue one I bought for $600, the gold one I bought for $400. It's pretty hard to find like a running insurable. The blue one I've taken on the Whipsaw Trail twice, which I always like to laugh. And one buddy with a $100,000 Jeep and this and that. And I was busting his balls the whole time because, oh yeah, my $600 Pathfinder will drive up this. What's your $100,000 Jeep struggling on it? And so it's back to that sort of island spec mentality of just spending the least amount of money possible to just get out and have fun with your buddies. And so it's just like people call me and ask me if I want to buy Dana 300s. People call me and ask me if I want to buy their Nissans. And the answer is usually yes. And I used to need them for parts. These days, there's less and less Nissan parts on the Pathmaker, but I'm a sucker for a cheap Nissan. And you yank their third out, you weld it up, and you can, with a little bit of fender trimming, you can fit a set of 34-inch tires on there. And welded rear and 34s, it's pretty impressive what you can do in a pretty much stock vehicle. And speaking of that reel you saw, though, that was, I got the blue one stuck in the woods. Me and my boy took her down in the front yard and couldn't get out. And it was like, I've been down there before. The trail was a little more gnarly than I expected. And as I was just bagging on it, I realized, oh, last time I was in there, I had the 34s on, and I actually had 31-inch Toyos on it. So I walk of shame. We had to leave, me and my boy, we had to leave it in the woods and walk home. The next day I brought the gold one down, has the 34s, and I got that one stuck too. So then I had to throw a third Nissan at the problem, which is the black one. And that'll be an upcoming video. In my infinite wisdom, I decided I should probably get the winch working on the blue one that I put on there and I never wired up. I carried all my tools down into the woods and tried to wire up the winch, and then I found out that the winch didn't work. So it's just, that's pretty much usually the way my videos go. And I start out with a great plan, and then it all falls apart when reality sets in. But we had fun.
So what does the wife think about this yard full of Nissans?
It's actually funny because who actually had to run the winch for me when I had to get her out, because I can't drive one rig and winch. So she came down and ran the winch control for me. She is everything I could hope for in a partner with stuff like that. She's extremely supportive. This is my full-time job. It has been jumping around back to the kind of the history. I was a carpenter for years and years, journeyman carpenter, and I destroyed my back. And I had back surgery, went back to work, destroyed my back again. And that's when maybe I was listening to too many Gary V videos or whatnot. But follow your dream. 14, I pretty much just decided that I was going to stop doing construction work and just try to figure out how to do this as a full-time job. And that's shortly after that, I met my wife. And thankfully, she's only ever known me as doing this, and she's all in. So she's super supportive of my ridiculous habits and Nissans in the yard and this and that. So she's a saint and patient with my car collections and whatnot. So
definitely makes life a lot easier.
That's exactly. I know. And I always tell her that. There's some women out there that would say, oh, why don't you go back into construction? You could make 4 times the money that you're making now. What the hell are you doing? You're an idiot, yada, yada, yada. But her parents were both artists for her whole childhood. So she understands what I'm doing more than most. And she's all in and supportive of me chasing my dream. And my dream is just to call myself a professional rock crawler and blow wheeling and somehow make a living out of that.
Yeah, creating is, it's funny. Everybody used to think before about artists just being painting or making clay and stuff like that, right? But now creation or creators are more onto the video side or the Instagram side and that as well. And that's becoming more and more recognized and more acceptable these days. So,
well, absolutely. And it's funny, like thinking back and whatnot. Like I started calling things Pathmaker Productions in 2004. It didn't exist in 2004. Any social media,
right?
Like it was like, I literally, like the first events that I was filming were on a Sony Handycam with cassette tapes. I still got them around here somewhere, but like this is pre-digital video days. And I don't think YouTube even came around until 2010 or something like that, or 2012. I've been filming rock crawling since before there was anything to do with it. Like I used to make full-length DVDs and sell those and whatnot. And, before there was the ability to share this stuff with the entire world on social media, that makes that so much easier. But it was just doing whatever the hell I can to go out in the woods and just, an excuse to get out there and call it a day at work. And so I've been pretty focused on that for more than 20 years now. And I
That's
always like
awesome.
to joke now, like, I'm unemployable. So at this point, so I don't have a choice. This is what I do because you don't want me as an employee. So I better figure out how to pay my bills.
No doubt. That's one thing that there's a lot of being your own boss kind of idea like that is really nice, but is also, you got to sit there and think, oh man, my next paycheck, I got to make this paycheck happen kind of idea. So there's no sitting back and just sitting back for, oh, I won't get a video out for this month or this week or whatever. It's, you got to be out there doing it and creating those videos.
You need to have the right sort of drive. And I try to talk a lot of friends into kind of ones that are hating their job and this and that, kind of start your own thing, this and that. And I'll try to help anybody who wants to start a business. I think that is definitely the way to go, but
Yep.
It's not for everyone. You need to be self-motivated. I'm a 5 a.m. guy. I actually was in this seat this morning before 4 a.m. So it's 6 p.m. now. So like I put some hours in, but when you like what you're doing, I'd rather do a 14-hour day editing rock crawling videos and doing podcasts than banging nails and lifting wood. And I think that's one of those signs that I'm doing what I should be doing, because I'll work a 12-hour day. And that's where people, we're out on the trail and we're climbing up the rocks and people realizing I'm doing 15K in a day. I'm doing 150 flights of stairs and this and that. And they're, how do you do it? I just do whatever it takes. And if you're having fun, that doesn't matter. It could be worse. I could be banging nails. So I always remind myself. So
exactly. There's a lot of people that are stuck in their jobs and they're daydreaming about doing stuff like that until they actually get out and do it and keep with it and go from there, because you don't know until you try. And one of the really neat things about BC is there's so many great 4x4 YouTube channels. Half of it's because BC is so beautiful compared to Southern Saskatchewan or whatever. But yeah, it's one really... Yeah, exactly. Our listeners are used to it. But yeah, that's what one really neat thing is, that there is so many really great YouTube channels in BC for sure. But like I say, a lot of people, they're fine with putting out a video once a month or something like that. But if you love it, run with it, man. That's all I can say after working in the parts industry for 30 whatever years and hating it. All I can say is just, if you find a passion like that and you can make some money at it, run with it.
And it's always just looking for the excuse. Like I can call it work. And I do have to give a shout out and a big, huge thank you to all the guys that are on the other side of the camera, all my buddies that are out there getting their rigs together every single week so we can go out and do some filming. And there's absolutely no way I could do what I do without them, because I think I drove my rig 8 videos last year and I filmed 50. It's all about people sending me messages, inviting me out, my core group of guys that are wheeling all the time. And they're the real rock stars, that they're doing it for the love of it. And here I am trying to monetize it and run around. So that's why I'll never complain about being tired or being wet or this or that, because I'm literally living my dream, and it might not be everyone's dream, but it's just a great excuse. As I always joke, some of the guys, oh, I can't come out. I got to do things with the wife, this and that. And I said, oh, you got to turn it into a job. And then, sorry, hon, I got to work this weekend. But
your property's called The Office, isn't it? Like I go to The Office.
That's pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
For our listeners, definitely check out Pathmaker Productions on YouTube and Instagram. But the videos I find, they're not just your regular slow, boring Moab crawl along the rocks kind of idea. We mentioned it too earlier. There's lots of rev limiters happening. There's some rollovers there. I find it quite interesting because it's not just the same boring, I shouldn't call rock crawling boring, but the same boring rock crawling that you see at Moab. And a lot of people are going to hate me for saying that, but it is just because everything's so sticky in Moab and you just idle up it kind of idea, right? Whereas your videos I find are quite exciting, if you want to call it that, for lack of a better term. But
I fully agree. On part of when I quit doing the construction thing, I bought a pop top camper, threw it in the back of my truck, and I went on the race circuit in 2014. And I was just driving from We Rock event to Ultra 4 event, and they're all spaced a week, 2 weeks apart. And I went 27,000 kilometers or something like that through the Western States filming rock crawling events. And don't get me wrong, I love that and this and that, but that sort of slow technical rock crawling it's impressive as hell.
Yep.
That said, I do have to say the bane of my existence, the camera never does it justice. The rocks never look as big on camera as when you're standing there and you're looking at this like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I drive up there, but there's something, it's like they're playing chess, and some guys absolutely love that and this and that, but I like to a little more exciting, and full throttle is exciting. It's either like a wreckers or checkers is a race term, but it's you're either going to do great, you're going to stomp the line, or you're going to roll it, or you're going to break your parts. And I try to keep things really exciting. I've been a quote unquote YouTuber. I hate that term since before that was even a thing. And therefore I don't like that sort of mentality. I realize that people don't want to hear me stand there for 3 minutes and just blab and blab and blab and talk about this and that. So for me, I try to keep it a lot of the action and just keep it coming the whole time, because let's be honest, we all like seeing either it going well or it going real bad. And that's, for me at least, that's where the fun is. And there's definitely ways I could film videos that are better. Guys give me advice all the time, and I really appreciate it. But I make videos the way I like to watch videos, and the way I like to drive. I'm not putting on an act. I love to hear the sound of my people and just put her down to the floor and hope for the best. And that's makes for exciting video and fun times. And that's what it's all about.
I think BC, we've got some really good, or I should say Western Canada, we've got some really good stuff happening. You got your rock crawling, which on the island, like I say, is all mossy and wet and stuff like that. So you got to use that to throttle a little bit. And we also got the Havoc style off-road racing that you guys are doing with the big rigs. And it's a combination of mud and big rocks and a lot of throttle as well. So I think Western Canada, we're sitting really good at both of those styles of rock crawling, because it's more exciting. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. Like back when I used to do a lot more on the road stuff, when I was on the road, I've shot 2-3 Havocs, like when they were out in Eastern Alberta, and then they ended up at, or was it even Havoc at that point? Then they ended up at Tail Creek. When I was Punisher Racing Series, which is more like Ultra 4 style. But still, you get the big tire guys come out there. And I do have to say, I absolutely hate mud. It's just,
me too.
It's the absolute worst. There's a video for my channel last year that we got talked into, a shortcut, and ended up all of us sinking our rigs. And I probably took years of life out of my damn rig, because it was like, I have water right up over the seat and killed a fan, and it just pulled my tranny because the throw out bearings make it sound that started doing it after that mud. And it was just, we had some regrets. Big ups to the guys who like running in the mud, but that's not for me.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm the same way. I avoid mud if I can, because it's a pain in the butt to clean up. It's hard on equipment, and it's fun for 30 seconds, and it lasts a lot longer to fix it, right?
That's absolutely it. Like, I can see the draw to it, and I understand. And also, if you got no rocks, if you got no big things to climb, and you live on the flatland, that's what you got. And those things are damn near drag racers these days. They're running 1,000 horsepower and they're just going straight, which is a different thing than what we're doing. We're a lot closer to the low budget rock bouncing, which is a thing that kind of came about in the early 2010s sort of thing. And now that's turned into a huge sport. And those things are impressive as hell. And that's a mixture of rock crawling and mud bogging. And those guys are running AG tires and stuff like that. But big dollars. And once you start getting big power like that, you're just throwing buckets of money at the problem. So
that's one thing I noticed about the guys you wheel with. You mentioned that they're not huge dollar rigs, but I've noticed that a lot of them are still using smaller engines as well. Toyota 4-cylinders or Chevy V6 or something like that.
There's a lot of 22 REs out there. There's a lot of guys who still run 16 valve Suzuki motors and whatnot, because we learn horsepower is fun, but it breaks stuff. You don't need, you got low gears, you don't need a huge amount of power. Like, don't get me wrong, the day I build a buggy, I'm going to build it with an LS, because I like that sort of stupidity. But is that the best thing for rock crawling? No, but it's fun. So a lot of the guys, are into the 4-cylinders, 6-cylinders. I know guys who are getting into nicer motors these days. I got a couple buddies who run Suzuki Areo motors, because those are like 2.3 liter aluminum Suzukis that are 160 horsepower, something like that. But they're small, they're light, and kind of bang for your buck, because every pound that you put on your rig makes it easier to break. So some guys, and everyone, that's where a lot of thinking splits in this sort of sport. Some guys go bigger motor, but then you need real big expensive axles. Whereas I got some other buddies who run Suzuki based buggies that are less than 3,000 pounds, and they can get away with running relatively big tires because their rig doesn't weigh very much. And then you can still stay with Toyota axles and whatnot. Because once you get a little bit more power, or you get over 37-inch tires, you need to get into 1-ton axles, and then pull out your wallet, because it costs a lot of money to build a set of 1-ton axles these days. And
a friend of mine just did that with the Dana 60 in the front end, and before you know it, you're into $6-7 grand by the time you do everything you want,
100%,
just for the front diff. And then so it adds up real fast.
100%. I'm a real bad influence on my core group of buddies, because I was the only guy with 1-tons for quite a while, and they were all running Toyota running gear. And then you're running on 36-inch TSLs, Intercos, and non-sticky tires. And then next thing you know, those tires are done, and there's a used set of 37-inch sticky Treps, which, for people not knowing, sticky is just a soft rubber compound, which gets you a lot more traction. But of course, more traction means more breakage. And the next thing you know, you're trying to run 37-inch stickies on a set of Toyota axles, and then you're blowing up pinions or axle shafts or Burfields every time you're out. And then all those guys, I've been doing this long enough that I've seen this evolution happen a few times, where guys, they start with mini truck Toyota axles, then they go into cruiser diffs, because in theory, Land Cruiser diffs, they're slightly bigger, they got bigger axle shafts, this and that, but the writing's still on the wall for all the guys running cruiser diffs, that you're going to end up with a Dana 60 and a 14-volt or a set of Super Duty diffs eventually, if you just want to keep pushing it and ended up on big tires. And so we all end up with 1-tons eventually, and the guys I know with. So, but because you always just want, those tires look really good, but they're bigger, and let's try those out. But you're constantly chasing down the weak link every time,
whether it's Burfields or whatever it is.
That's exactly it. Right now I run 40-inch sticky Maxxis Trepadors, and in my opinion, it's like a Ford versus Chevy argument, but in my opinion, they're as good as they get for the tires for wheeling around here. That said, guys, a whole bunch of guys I know were into the 40-inch sticky Maxxis Trepadors, and then all of a sudden Interco came out with some 43-inch Super Swamper SX stickies, and I know a whole bunch of guys went into those, but those are big boots. 43s are real big tires, and then you got to throw more money at axle shafts, and you got to throw more money at gears, and it's a dumb sport. What are we doing?
Just keep on tossing the money into the dumpster, right? That's basically what we're doing.
That's exactly it. Just light it on fire and empty out your pockets. But I don't know. We all joke that it could be worse. We could have started heroin instead. I don't know what's worse.
It was funny. I saw a meme on Facebook a while ago, and there's a guy in a off-road truck, and he goes, I used to be a pothead, or I used to be a druggie, and I'm thinking I'm going to go back to that because it's a lot less expensive. And
that's exactly. But that said, I know a guy myself. I know, for whatever reason, guys need to have dumb, expensive hobbies. Whether you're building hot rods, or you're into fishing, or you're into snowmobiles, or I don't know. We're all a bunch of idiots, and we're all just having to spend our hard-earned money on something. And thankfully, we all have supportive wives that are into letting us do our passion. And ours happens to be rubber in the woods.
Does your wife go out with you often?
Oh yeah, she loves wheeling. Cool. Not as much since we got our baby, but yeah, it was really funny. It was 10 years ago now. I've known her for 11 years. And the very first time took her wheeling, we put her right on a roof. And in our world, that's not a real big deal. And I got the full exo cage, and it wasn't a big deal. And we're hanging upside down, and my buddy Craig is spinning around and running out a winch. We're still strapped in, and I didn't make it a big deal. and nobody around made it a big deal. We're not freaking out, and it's not, oh my God, nobody's yelling and this and that. And so she just got used to the fact that that's just part of wheeling. That sometimes we roll over, sometimes we break stuff. And so I joke with her sometimes. They say, babe, you're a bit of a wheeling snob. Like, you know that because you came in at a pretty high level. I'm definitely not anybody overly special. We do some pretty high level rock crawling and pretty extreme stuff. And that's the only rock crawling she's ever done. She had never done anything like that before meeting me. So she's got a real weird sense of what's possible. And so sometimes she gets out there heckling and, well, you could probably drive up that. But yeah, no, she really likes it. And we're all just out there having fun, and she likes to support that. And it is a family affair. Like I said, I took the blue Pathfinder in the woods the other day with my boy and got stuck in the woods, and we'll have the kids will come out, and my buddies will bring their kids out and strap them into the seats and helmets for everyone. And it's one of our things that we're known for, that we always joke that nobody else does. We always bring a barbecue. We have a barbecue on the back. We crush them all the time. We roll them. We buy used shitty barbecues off of Marketplace and whatnot. But everyone should be going wheeling with a barbecue. My poor buggy buddies are out there eating cold sandwiches halfway through the day, and we're firing up smokies and ribs and bacon wrapped scallops. And what it makes it fun on a cold day to have a barbecue and to hang out with the kids. And it's good fun.
That's what it's all about. Just going out there and having fun. One of the things I noticed on your videos is that pretty much everybody runs a helmet.
Yes. I don't have anything to do with pushing anybody into that, but I think we all decided that, I don't know, or we've seen some hard rollovers. Thankfully, I have never been there when anyone's been badly injured or anyone's been killed. I can't say the same for quite a few of my buddies have been there when other people have had real bad accidents, and it's pretty easy. Helmets are pretty cheap. And one of the ways I force myself to wear a helmet is I have my camera mounted on the thing, which everybody jokes is it's hangs down like I could barely see under the thing, because if I wear it up on my forehead, then you just see the roof of the rig. So I actually have it down blocking my vision, but it forces me to wear my helmet all the time because I don't want to film, helmet on. And it's being realistic, we're driving up some pretty extreme stuff. We're driving up 30, 40 foot climbs sometimes. And if it goes wrong at the top, you're going to do 2-3 rolls tumbling down, and you're hoping your cage is going to stay together, but you don't be bouncing your head off the rocks on the way. So I strongly encourage it. But it's really funny. Back to how long I've been doing this, I remember one of our events, the early 2000s, and there was one of the buddies was wearing a helmet, and the other guys were giving him a hard time about that. But that was in the early 2000s when you go to the ski hill and no one's wearing a helmet. That wasn't a thing. But then a couple years later at that event, everyone's wearing helmets. Like, they weren't mandatory at that time. It was just, we're just out being yee shit with the boys. But I'm happy to see everyone wearing helmets, because none of us are getting younger. So I don't want to see anybody scramble in their brains.
Yeah, I know I was happy when I saw that. That's one thing I have noticed. And I'm like, it's just, to be honest with you, common sense. And it's something that, it's like wearing a helmet when you're biking, mountain biking. We didn't do that 15 years ago, right? Nobody wore a helmet. You take a rock to the head and you'll start wearing a helmet pretty fast.
Exactly. You meet a couple buddies who've had head injuries doing other things and this and that, and you real quickly realize, shit, I better not bounce my head off of something. And most of us run the Axle off-road helmets. Those are real nice ones. Shout out to those guys, and they're comfortable to wear all day. And I'm not affiliated with them in any way, shape, or form. They've kept my head from bouncing off rocks a few times. And I'm never going to give someone a hard time if they choose not to wear a helmet. You're an adult. You're out in the woods. You're doing your own thing. But for me, it keeps my wife happy.
Yeah, that's all you can ask for, right? So
helmet and belts. Just, I don't know. We're not driving on logging roads. Wear a good harness and put your helmet on.
Yeah, definitely. To our listeners again, definitely recommend checking out Pathfinder Productions on YouTube and Instagram. Sorry,
got it.
Pathfinder. That's awesome.
You're not the only person.
I got the Pathfinder thing in my head, right? So Pathmaker Productions on YouTube and Instagram, because it's hard to explain, but this is some serious action happening, because as you mentioned, some of these hills are big, but they're steep, they're off camber. You got trees in there you're trying to go around, and it's just, everything looks like a good challenge on there.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, it's the bane of my existence that it doesn't look as extreme as it is, I've had many times guys will bug me in the comments, or they'll send me messages. No, I want to come out and I want to come out. And then they actually get out there and they look and, oh, I watched your videos for years. And they, oh shit, that's actually what it looks like. And yeah. And some of the guys that we wheel with are running world-class buggies these days.
Yep.
Some of the guys on the island are big dollar rigs, but some of them can hang with some of the nicest rigs and the best drivers in the world. And part of it is because our terrain is really hard, that there's some really skilled drivers around here. And I'm fortunate enough to call those guys friends and get to check out what they're doing. And it's impressive as hell. If people listen and you get a chance to see a rock crawling competition or something like that, go check it out. Because like I said, the camera never does it justice. It never looks as steep, never looks as big. And then you're standing there and it's, oh Christ, you guys are going to drive up there? And it's, oh yeah, we're going to drive up there and then we're going to drive back down there.
Yeah. So speaking of which, you spent a lot of time going to a lot of different events down in the States. One of the events that, as this episode comes out, that would have just finished is the King of Hammers down in Southern California. And you've been down there a couple times, right?
5
times.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was there 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, maybe 6 times. And then I was there last year. And usually as the part of that, we call it the Yellow Vest Mafia, I get media pass. And part of the reason I do that is because then I get on the other side of the fence and write for magazines and do photos and race photos and stuff like that. But that's something that if you live anywhere near there, it's worth going and checking out. And it's not even just the wheeling, it's just everything. There's 50, 60, 70, 100,000 people out in the desert there. And we all think some of the guys we know have some fancy buggies. And then you get down there and you realize, oh yeah, we're just poor Canadians. There's some real high dollar rigs and those things are just straight up race cars. So that is something that's very cool to watch. It's a hard event to watch because the cars move so fast and they're gone in seconds, but it's impressive as hell. You're watching Shannon Campbell with 1,000 horsepower pound up backdoor, which is an infamous 8-foot tall ledge. And he's just lifting his front tires as he's catwalking up there. And when his rigs are $500,000 these days, and it's just, it's something else. And they've really, Ultra 4 and King of the Hammers really pushed the sport. A lot of the parts that we run in our rigs are from guys down there running race programs and companies coming in and sponsoring and test and tune. And I know Tim from TMR is down there right now. And that's one of the few Canadian businesses that are selling off-road parts. And he's down there testing everything that he's building. And it's a great proving ground for that. And it's just fun. Like we did last year, it was 8 straight days wheeling all day and then wheeling all night. And just there's with your 10,000 closest friends. And it's a hell of a lot of fun.
I've heard it often described as the Burning Man of the 4-wheel drive industry.
100%. Like I've never been to Burning Man, but even just you're in Hammertown at nighttime and there's just bombs and explosions and fireworks going off and there's guys whipping by on mini bikes with LED whips and there's just all sorts of ridiculous shenanigans everywhere you go. And it's controlled chaos because you're just camping out in the desert. So it's just literally 50,000 people in campers just showing up, picking out your square of dirt, setting up there, and just there's rock crawling all around you. And it's a cool thing because the course is closed a lot during the day. So nighttime falls and then just the hills light up with light bars and stuff because everybody goes out and runs trails that have been closed all day at nighttime. So a lot of night wheeling happens down in at the Hammers, and it's pretty cool to sit there and camp and just see the jackassery going on everywhere. And it's millions and millions of dollars worth of automotive things. If you're a gearhead in any way, shape, or form, it's a worthwhile mecca to make a pilgrimage to. It's some work. If you're leaving from here, we typically get on the road at 4 a.m. Of course, I'm on the island, so I got to get a ferry the day ahead of time, stay, and then you're driving. You start at 4 a.m. You make it to Northern California by 10 p.m. or mid-California, and you spend the night, and then another 8 hours the next day. It's 27 hours or something on the road. And so to some people, that sounds like a nightmare, but it's worth it. It's fun.
We did an interview with Jamie from Thor Motorsports. He's out of Ontario. And last year he pitted with the TMR team. He was actually the first driver that was sponsored by TMR.
Yeah.
Back years ago, they did some work for him, and he had his Throttle Happy message board, and the sponsorship thing was born. But yeah, so Jamie went down last year, and we did an interview with him a couple weeks ago. And a couple of things that really I took away from it I thought was quite interesting. First of all, he said, don't bother going to SEMA, go to King of Hammers. He said the amount of incredible vehicles you'll see there far surpasses SEMA.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've never been to SEMA, but that's all Pavement Princess stuff. And you're sitting there in a booth. Whereas, like I said, you're sitting in camp and something will go by and it'll be like a rail car. And the next thing there'll be a $1 million literally trophy truck will go by, 1,200 horsepower. And then there'll be a guy on a 3-wheeler with no pants on. And then there'll be when it's just, and the pits are open, you can go in, and everyone is like-minded people. Everyone is wanting to talk wheelers and 4x4s, and everyone's pretty cool into sharing and showing off their stuff. And that's one cool thing about our sport is everything, because everyone kind of is building stuff themselves in their own garage themselves. Everything is unique. There's very few cookie cutter rigs out there when everyone has a different solution to the problem. And I have yet to get the Pathmaker down there, which I'd like to do, because I'll tell you, I was there last year and we wheeled with a lot of people and I did not see a single Nissan. Back to the redheaded stepchild. You see a lot of Toyotas, you see a lot of Jeeps, you see a lot of buggies, but you don't see too many Nissans. So one of these days I'll get to drag it down there, but it's a big trip.
There's probably a reason for that, isn't there?
Exactly. Only getting you to buy Nissans.
My last rig before my Tacoma was Nextera, so I've been in that family. So,
well, they're relatively reliable, but they don't have a very big aftermarket. So that's you really get brass tacks. You get down to it. That's one of the reasons why you don't see many Nissans out there. Where there's 2 companies out there doing Nissan stuff, there'd be 10 doing Toyota stuff.
Exactly.
So you're limited in your options. My solution to most of our rigs is Nissan is you just keep pulling Nissan parts off and putting domestic parts on, and that solves the problems pretty quick.
Yeah. But at least you can still have that Nissan grill in there, and the little emblem on there, and
absolutely. And I still got the roof and whatnot. So mine still looks like a 2-door Pathfinder. And it'll be a cold day before I cut that apart, because I like the fact that it's the big wagon and it's big and heavy and unique. But I don't know. It does it for me.
I like weird vehicles. I agree. There's so many, Tacomas and so many Jeeps out there. Like one of my best friends here in town, he's running a 90s Dakota on 40s. And
you don't see too many of those either.
It's camouflage, and he's got an LS in it and 1 tons and all that. But the same thing, I absolutely love it because it's different, right?
Yeah.
It's something you don't see very often.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm the contrarian, so I like that. I'm not really standing out in a crowd, but just everyone's doing A, then I'll do B just to be difficult.
Having said that, he's got to pack all his own parts because nobody else is running his parts, right?
I believe it. I've been there before. I feel his pain.
Recommend our listeners check out pathmakerproductions.com. And because you've got a bunch of different things. You got all your videos on there. And I think you've done a really good job on separating some of the videos, whether it's the hardcore wheeling and that's Nissan stuff and et cetera. So I think you've done a really good job of separating that so they can get on there and get into that whole whatever genre they're looking to do. But some of the other things that you've got on there is, I know you got a CNC plasma table now.
I did. I picked that up used off the marketplace last year, and honestly, it's back to the being self-employed and doing whatever the hell it takes. And I've been making, the other thing I have on my website is my merch, my shirts and my decals and whatnot. And they've been keeping the dream alive for years. And realizing after designing all these decals and shirt designs and whatnot, and I love doing that stuff, I realized designing metal stuff is the same. You're using the same programs, you're going about it the same way. I bought that to build my own stuff and to come up with some fab parts. And then also I'm this kind of weird niche that there's not that many people running Nissan stuff, but there's enough that I try to fill in with some of those parts. And I'm always adding stuff all the time. One of the things we were talking about off air is my bad habit of blowing up Dana 300s. And so one of the things I designed on there is a truss that holds both sides of your Dana 300 together, because I was getting to the point after killing 6 of them that I was splitting the cases right in half. So I designed a 1/4-inch plate, bolts together, hold both sides of your case together. I actually haven't even added it yet. I've also designed a 1/4-inch steel cover for it, because the cover on a Dana 300 is just thin stamped steel. So you got one side of your Dana 300 that is not very well supported. And when you're hitting stuff at this level, you get flex in the case and they split. So adding more products all the time. I'd like to add some more tabs and suspension brackets, and I'm working on something else. It's all my own need. I broke a kingpin knuckle one day, just the knuckle completely, or the top rip right off the Ford knuckles. So I've got a gusset kit that you can cut out, weld up. You put your knuckle on the barbecue, back to island spec. You put your knuckle on the barbecue and preheat it, and then beat all these little puzzle pieces together, weld it on there. And for the money, it saves you the $1,000 from having to go buy crane knuckles or reed knuckles or something like that.
Yep.
And so that's what it's all about, is just back to that island spec sort of mentality of how can I build this myself, instead of going and spending big dollars and buying it from a fancy company, and adding new stuff on there all the time. And I'm always looking for people. I get messages from people, hey, you should build this, and let me put it on the list, and I'll figure out how to design it. And I'm self-taught with plasma cutting and designing stuff and editing video and filming video and pictures. And the only thing I've ever been taught in my life is how to be a carpenter. And that does not really help me much in this endeavor, but that's back to just, I'll figure it out. That's my thing. So I'm learning my Fusion 360 all the time, the CAD program, to design more parts and adjusting them, and to getting feedback from people. If something either doesn't fit or doesn't quite work, then I love to hear from my customers, and I'll tweak the file and either send them a new part, or if they've already fixed themselves, I'll go out as version 2.0 for the rest of everyone. So that's what it's all about.
No, that's great. So yeah, definitely check out at pathmakerproductions.com. And if you do have an idea that for Brady, by all means, shoot him an email and see what you can come up with. And also want to throw out, you got a lot of merch up on that site too.
Once again, it's necessity. It's just design and stuff, trying to pay the bills. And I like the graphic design stuff. I've been doing that for years, and I have the equipment here to cut the decals, and all of my shirts and hats and stuff like that's all done in-house by myself. So people send me all the time, oh, you say this on videos all the time, you should make a shirt. Like one of the I wish I knew which video it is. I can't remember, because it's, you said I have a lot of videos. I have more than 700 videos up on YouTube, and I'll never forget. It was 8 years ago or something like that. All I got the comment was, you are a stupid guy. You spelt it wrong. So I have shirts that say stupid guy. And every time I sell one of those, I just have a good chuckle that there's somebody out there somewhere around the world wearing a shirt that says stupid guy on the front of it. And so sometimes I have an overwhelming amount of merch on there and whatnot, but it's easy to make a new design. I love hearing from people and telling me if you want something custom, and I think it's worthwhile to make a design. I love hearing from people from either anything, either ideas for videos or ideas for shirts or all that stuff. I love hearing from people. We were talking off air that it's cool when you get messages from people literally all around the world, and that happens these days. And you're shipping stuff internationally, and the world's a smaller place, so it's really cool to hear from people who follow along, and if they're asking for something, then I can make it for them. That's awesome. There's something really cool about knowing someone somewhere is wearing a shirt with my quote unquote name on it. That never gets old. So when you see them in the wild, that's really cool. Walking around a KOH and you pass somebody else wearing a Pathmaker Productions shirt, and that's really cool.
Yeah, that's definitely neat for sure. So if somebody was looking at starting their own YouTube video in 2025, what kind of advice would you give them? And not necessarily good luck. There we go. Not necessarily to make a living from it, maybe as a hobby or whatever, right?
The biggest is just get out there, do it. And like I I've had points in my past where it's you use the excuse of I need this other piece of equipment or that's going to make it better or this or that. But at the end of the day, content is king. Having a real expensive, real fancy camera doesn't mean anything if you're not out in the woods. You can get by with a $200, $300 GoPro. And these days, back to how long I've been doing this, starting on Sony handy cams. And then I used to use a DSLR camera and I'd be making these stupid umbrellas because we live in the fucking rainforest and it'd be raining and I'd be trying to keep my expensive camera dry and I'm building these shoulder rigs that I'm lugging in and out of the rigs, and because there just was no such thing as an action cam. But these days I probably have 15 GoPros here and from every generation along the lines, and but there's other companies out there. I know DJI makes stuff, but what it really gets down to is just get out there and start filming stuff and then start editing it, because you're going to learn way more just doing it yourself than you're ever going to learn from me trying to explain it. And you're going to watch it and you're going to say, oh, why did I say that? Or why did I film like that? Or why am I those small things, like when you're filming rock crawling, you stand at the top and you're looking downhill, you know what? It looks flat. You can't film from the top. It doesn't look like a hill at all. So it's those little things. But how do you learn that? Just by getting out there and filming and putting in the time. And it doesn't have to be rock crawling. If you want to do anything, it's just start filming it and start putting it out there. And social media makes it so easy these days. And then I spent the first 300 videos on my channel. It was a different time back then. I didn't say anything at all. But it was just, I was the silent, nobody saw my face and I'm just filming rock crawling. But then people were telling me this kind of, the world changed with how video done, and people want to see my face and they want to hear my commentary. I still get people that find me annoying, and I get it. Not everybody is my cup of tea, but people want to hear what the person behind the camera has to say. And so bring the viewer in and explain a little bit what's going on. And I'm still 700 videos and 21 years of doing this. I still learn something every goddamn time I'm out there. I was saying I blew up my Dane 300 last weekend. My helmet cam wasn't on. It was too cold. My camera, it was on. It shut off. So I got it on one of the two cameras I had going. But that's always the story of your life, that, you know, you only learn these things. I should have double checked that my camera was doing okay. It was -3 that day or something. And but yeah, just biggest thing is get out there and start film whatever the hell you want.
I find a lot of people just get so nervous. Like, I know that because I'm involved in a lot of podcast groups and stuff like that. And they're like, people are like, oh, I want to make sure it's all perfect. It's like, your first 10 videos are going to suck. There's just no way around it. Even with the podcast, I go back to episodes 1, 2, and 5, and even 20. And now we're at like 128, I think, with you. But you go back to those first 10 or 20 and they suck. I'll be honest with you, but you learn every single time, as you said, and hopefully every single time you can make these little improvements, right? So
exactly. I take notes sometimes, and like I still, to this day, I put out 50 videos a year. I try to, and every single one of them I watch, and there's still points where I'm like, God damn it, why did I say that, or why did I shoot that like that, or here I'm looking into the sun, or blew that. I could let that stop me and not put out videos, or just the only way you get better is practicing. When I first started getting in front of the camera, I was awkward and I didn't know what the hell I was talking about and say stupid things. And I still do. As with everything in life, you get better at it the more you do it, and you can't pay for experience. You gotta
exactly.
As one of the off-road shops around here has shirts that say you can't bolt on experience. So you got to get out there and you just got to put the miles in and do it.
You can watch hours and hours of porn, but until you actually do something, you're not going to be good at
it. That's exactly it. That's exactly.
Cool. Is there anything you want to talk about that we missed?
Not that I could think of. Put me on the spot. I don't know. I did I think a decent job of kind of explaining who I am and what we do. And I'm sure it's just like we're talking about with the video. We're going to hang up here and then I'm going to think, God damn it, why didn't I fucking talk about that? That was just, but I should have made some notes. But no, I'm happy. And this is literally the first podcast I've ever done. And I guess one thing I could say and should say, give a shout out, is I don't have any sponsors. I never, and don't get me wrong, I'd love some sponsors. We're a little rough around the edges. I got 15,000 subs on YouTube and this and that. But in the name of YouTube, I'm not a very big channel. But the one thing that has allowed me to keep doing this, so I got to give a shout out and a big thank you, is my Patreon channel. I got some great guys on there that give me feedback. They get extended cut, no ad videos with all the greased up and all the ridiculous shenanigans. And so give back to them. But I could not do it without the guys on the Patreon who, just they love watching rock crawling and they want to help me get out in the woods and film more. Huge thank you to the only real sponsors I have, which is all the beauties over on my Patreon channel. And I really appreciate every single one of those guys, because I've said it before, but I literally couldn't keep doing this if it wasn't for the Patreon, or I couldn't put out as many videos. So they're a huge part in keeping the dream alive and keep moving forward with this. So big thank you to all the guys on my Patreon channel for helping out. And, I say, buy me a trail soda or however it works out, but it makes a big difference for me. So I majorly appreciative.
There's a lot of money that gets spent that people don't realize. And like you say, as you're making your living doing it, but there's a lot of hidden costs in there as well too. So
well,
every little bit helps out.
Exactly. I make $50 off a YouTube video, and if I'm running my rig, I'll burn $70 in fuel. So
Exactly.
as a business, it doesn't really make much sense, as my accountant likes to tell me. But it really does help out. And one of the guys on the Patreon said, "Oh, I spend $20 a month on Netflix and I barely even watch it. So to give you $5 a month and you get me 4 videos, and they're pretty much an hour each week, and happy to throw a couple bucks your way." And that makes a big difference for me, and it gets more rock crawling videos out for everyone else that's watching on the YouTube. I always remind the guys on the public YouTube that thank the guys on the Patreon channel, because they're the force that keeps me being able to keep filming.
So the last question we ask every guest is, what Canadian would you like to hear in a 4x4 Canada podcast?
I do have to give a shout out to one of my Alberta brothers, Eric Brinker from Brinkfab. I don't know if you've ever talked with him. He's just an awesome human being. I know if he's not there already, he's going to be heading down to KOH anytime. And he's got a fab shop outside of Red Deer and builds very nice stuff. And I couldn't say enough good stuff about Brinker, and would love to see him be more well-known out there and Brinkfab his shop. And so he's a guy that's worthwhile to talk to.
Yeah, I've heard of him, and I've never talked to him in person, but everything I've heard about him has been really good, and the quality workmanship that comes out of that shop, from everything I've seen, is top-notch. Like, we're talking world-class level kind of idea.
It absolutely is. And I'd be happy to introduce you if you did want to talk with him. Like, I know a lot of guys. The Canadian 4x4 scene, rock crawling scene, is not real big. The race scene is even smaller. And he's a guy who he's down there every year at KOH, just trying to live his dream. And big respect for Brinkfab and him putting the effort in, because Christ, I think my drive's long. He's got an extra 13 hours on top of that to bring a whole race team down there. And he's building beautiful stuff. And he's another contrarian. He's changed now, but for years and years, he was running the only man out there on the lake bed with a big block Cadillac motor. Why? Just because nobody else has it. Just because it was fucking cool.
Why not?
So, man after my own heart. So love that guy. And he'd be a worthwhile guy to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually heard that from somebody else. They said he's got some stories that would be worth listening to for sure. So
absolutely. Yeah, that's part of the whole race and 4x4 family, especially if you get onto these road trips and whatnot. I've spent a lot of hours in a lot of trucks and tow rigs with a lot of these guys, and through the hardship and through the sleeping on the ground and wheeling all day and wheeling all night, you make some pretty good friends, and you see what everyone's really made of when you're out there. But we're all there for the same reason, and so it's really cool to be able to be part of this Canadian 4x4 family, that we're on the hardcore side of it, but we're all there for the same thing and just the fun of driving over rocks.
One thing I've really noticed, I've been involved in the 4x4 industry for years. Like, I grew up in it, and one of the things I've noticed is that the 4x4 community is unlike any other. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking the mud bog guys or the rock crawl guys or the overland crew or the weekend warriors out there hitting the trails, that I've really found that the community just sticks together. You walk up to a rig and start talking to the guy, they'll talk your ear off for an hour about their rig. And same thing if a vehicle's stuck in the trail, there's gonna be 4 guys down there helping work on it and stuff like that. And you don't see that like in the drag racing world. Everything's so secretive and everything's so competitive and that. You might see it a bit more at, say, an event like the King of the Hammers or some of the real big events, but especially on the Canadian side, I've really found that the 4x4 community is such a wonderful community.
And part of it is because we're doing extreme stuff in extreme locations. So it's that sort of no man left behind mentality is you have to be good to the guys that you're with, because you might blow your rig up in 30 feet. And if you've been an asshole or not good friends with the guys, they have no obligation to bring you home. And there's no tow trucks coming out there. And there's no one's going to save you. First of all, never wheel alone. And you got to rely on your buddies. And on the flip side, they got to be able to rely on you. And you might not have every tool in your truck, but when you put a few of them together, you usually have enough stuff that you can get her home. And everyone, because it's all home built, no one's really paying someone else to build them. Everyone has a pretty good understanding of how to fix their own rig, and sometimes how to fix your rig better than you do. And everyone's willing to jump in and fix, or like we do a lot of rolling over, and we've got it down to a science now that if you're on your roof, it's not screwing around. Everyone, without talking about it, jumps into action, because the longer you lay on your roof for, the more you're draining fluid, gear oil on the window, and your tranny's dumping it and this and that. So everyone kind of jumps into action, and everyone slides their ego behind, and let's get that rig back on all fours here before we have more problems. And that's one of the things that I really love about the 4x4. Like you said, everyone is real good group of people, and they're all out there wanting to help out and any way they can, because we've all been there where you're standing there and your rig's broken and you're looking at it and you're like, oh fuck, what am I going to do? How am I getting home? What have I done? And your buddies then are jumping in, and next thing you know, you're cutting a tree and you're sliding it under there and you're ratchet strapping it to the leaves, and you're driving out on a tree stump. But that's whatever it takes. And if we can help it, you're never leaving a rig out, and you're definitely not leaving any people out there. So that really breeds camaraderie.
Yeah, it's an incredible community overall. And I'm really happy to be proud to be a part of that community, because like I say, it's not that way in every community. Like I say, you want to talk about people not liking each other, go to the stock car world in Ontario. The dirt track world is just brutal. And then you go to an event, a bunch of wheelers, and it's a totally different,
Exactly. Even though guys are competing against each other, they're still going to go and dig through their trailer and pull out their spare drive shaft to give it to you because you popped one, and you're going to feel bad if they pop theirs. But everyone just wants to watch the trucks do cool shit. But winning that, and as much as a lot of other sports, it's all just about having fun in the woods, and that's what it's all about.
So once again, we're talking with Brady from Pathmaker Productions. You can check him out at pathmakerproductions.com and on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Definitely check out his YouTube. He's got, as you mentioned, over 700 videos out there. So that's a ton, and that'll keep you watching for a week or so. What is some of your favorite videos out there, or your more popular videos?
Some of the road trip stuff, some of the ones I went down to, I get invited everywhere all the time. I wish I could go everywhere I was invited. I wish I had the budget to it. But some of the videos that stand out, last year I got invited down to Washington State. We ended up in, the rules are a lot different down there, doing stuff, but we ended up in this boulder field that's in behind my buddy's property, and driving through rocks the size of houses, and literally, and we spent all day in there, and it was just another one of those, like, the camera really doesn't do it justice, but you're looking around and you're thinking, like, how the hell do we get ourselves into this? And some of my King of the Hammers videos from last year, same thing. I'm trying to do a bit of a trail tour. Like, if you're interested in going and doing some rock crawling at King of the Hammers, look up Pathmaker Productions, King of the Hammers. And I got some videos. We ran 40 trails or something like that last year, start to finish. So if you're curious about what Jackhammer Trail looks like, what the King's Veto looks like, what all these cool trails look like. You can go in and check them out. And we ran them from top to bottom, and give yourself a little bit of an idea what you're getting into before you get it over your head. But it's hard to have too many stand out because it's just, I've been doing it for so many years.
So many.
And there's so many good memories. I love pulling up those videos because it's really cool that other guys are watching it. But for me, these are some of the best days of my life. Of some of my best friends. So it's awesome that not only do I get to share it with everyone else, but the guys behind the camera or in front of the camera, they get to go home and share it with their family. Because I know a lot of those guys, like a lot of my buddies, they wheel, but it's really hard to explain to somebody what the hell it is you're actually doing out there. They hear all the 4x4 and everyone has a different idea of that. So the guys that I go wheeling with or that invite me out, they can send them across a link. Oh, check this out. And this is what we were doing on the weekend. And it's really cool to be able to share that with friends and family and everyone who's interested in what the hell we're doing or what they're doing out in the woods. So I think that's really cool. And it keeps me going,
I think that's a great spot to leave it. Once again, Brady, really appreciate you coming on tonight and talking with me about all your rock crawling videos from the island and everywhere else too, right? But I think it's a special breed over on the island.
I agree.
Yes.
No, thanks for having me here. And like I said, thanks to all the guys that let me come out and film them wheeling, because I couldn't keep doing this without all them. And they're the real stars here. They're the ones who are out there busting ass and getting their stuff together so we can just keep going wheeling. And so I love every minute of it. And I'm going to keep doing this until my knees give out. There'll be more videos to come always, because this is what I do. So,
Now there's 700 coming, right?
hell yeah.